And today I'd like to talk about lots of notable heists at the Louvre. And now we all know, of course, about the heist of the crown jewels in 2025, happened fairly recently. And this, of course, was in October of 2025, so just a few weeks ago upon the recording of this video. And that made me start thinking, I wonder how many times something like this has happened at the Louvre. Like, have other super important or super valuable things been stolen from there? Because we know that the crown jewels, what was stolen, were, well, Napoleonic era, aka 19th century crown jewels, many of which had been worn by queens of France and all that among in that age, and they were worth over $100 million altogether. I think like 88 million euros, which would make it like $102 million, American dollars, that is. Um, and so was that were those the most valuable things ever stolen from the Louvre? And by the way, what are the chances that the Louvre is going to get anything back? Right? I was also wondering about that because the crown jewels are still missing to this day. We haven't found them yet, even though or people have been arrested and all that. We still don't have them back yet. So I was wondering about what about has anything else important been stolen from the Louvre? And did we get any of those things back? And so the biggest heist that comes to mind for me, the most important one for me, aside from potentially the crown jewels, was quite a while ago, and that's when the Mona Lisa was stolen. And that was, of course, the Mona Lisa and all the other thefts I'm talking about, other than the crown jewels, were all in the 20th century. Um, but the Mona Lisa, of course, is known as one of Leonardo da Vinci's masterpieces, and it's super famous and a global art icon and super valuable these days. But what's interesting to me is that before it got stolen from the Louvre, it was pretty obscure. And so not a lot of people knew of it, and not a lot of people thought of it as a masterpiece of Da Vinci's. And it wasn't very valuable until it was stolen. But all that changed when it got stolen. So we will get into that in just a minute. But first, I want to mention other notable heists from the Louvre. And this includes King Charles X's sword. And this is a with a sword and the uh, um, scabbard, the sheath kind of thing that goes with it. Anyway, um, they were actually diamond encrusted and whatnot. So it's not just your typical sword or anything. And that's to me is funny because A, that one has never been recovered, and B, they came through the same window to steal that sword. Uh, three thieves back in the 1970s, that was, came in the same window and when they stole that sword as the four guys used when they stole the crown jewels nearly 50 years later. So that to me it points to a huge point of security that the Louvre should really take care of. And so in addition to the Mona Lisa and King Charles X's sword, what was also stolen were some pieces of Renaissance armor. So I'm talking like 16th century. This stuff was from Italy, from 16th century Italy, kind of like the Mona Lisa, actually. Um, but these two, luckily, the two pieces of armor that were stolen were eventually recovered, and we will get into the story of how and why a little later. But it turns out not a lot of things do get discovered because the Mona Lisa and the Renaissance armor were both recovered, but King Charles's sword and the crown jewels still missing to this day. Just like both of the paintings that I wanted to talk about, other than the Mona Lisa, in the 1990s, a Renoir painting, right? The French Impressionist, widely known French Impressionist, Renoir. A small painting of his was stolen from the Louvre in 1990, and there's also a painting. And by the way, on that same day, another small style painting was stolen, as well as like a dozen pieces of ancient Roman jewelry. And so, um, yeah, that was a big day, a big loss for the Louvre. And sadly, those things have not been recovered at all. Still to this day, they're all missing. And then in 1998, we had a painting by Jean-Baptiste Camille Corot, otherwise just known as Camille Corot. He was an important 19th century painter when it comes to landscapes. He was a pivotal painter in the landscape movement. And so, yeah, we had a lot of important works of art and important antiquities being stolen out of there. And to me, that's funny that the crown jewels got nabbed through the same window that the King Charles's sword were nabbed. But anyway, I find the most important part of this and the most interesting piece of all of this is when the Mona Lisa was stolen. So let's talk about that. And so that was way back in 1911. And by the way, before the theft uh, of the Mona Lisa by Vincenzo Perugia, I mean, and who was the guy pictured there. Well, he was ended up being the guy convicted of it, but actually he had help from two Italian brothers who helped him. He was an Italian handyman actually working at the Louvre at the time. And I'm not sure exactly why they picked that painting to steal, although it is a Da Vinci, right? So that could be reason enough. But it was not his most famous work because before 1911, this painting was pretty obscure. People didn't really think of it as one of Da Vinci's masterpieces, and it wasn't like super duper valuable either. And this guy, he ended up being the one getting caught for it and convicted for it and everything. The two Italian brothers who helped him pull it off. Sadly, well, not so sadly, but maybe I guess it's okay that they're not really going down in history so much as he is. And the funny thing is, so again, the Mona Lisa, not well known at the time of this, but I think he made a star of the Mona Lisa, made a star of her by turning her into international news and got a lot of press. And so a previously obscure painting, all of a sudden he he steals it and there's news story after news story after news story and so on and so forth going on, all saying how, oh my God, this Da Vinci painting was stolen from the Louvre and nobody can find it. How did they get it back? That all of a sudden made the most Mona Lisa and international icon and made it into something that people knew about it and something that was highly coveted, which ended up cranking up the value on that piece up to around $5 million. So, by the way, $5 million in 1911, it would be more than $170 million today. So that's the kind of value that all of a sudden get put on the Mona Lisa because she got super famous for having been stolen from the Louvre. And then even more press came out when it was finally recovered. And then there was a trial. All that happened in Florence, Italy. And tell you why, because this guy, Vincenzo Perugia, he, well, he kept it hidden for a couple years in his place in Paris. He was living in Paris, and he had it hidden under a false bottom of a trunk. And why was that possible? Because when he and the two Italian brothers came in and took it, well, it's not exactly came in. They hid in a custodial closet all night long. And then in the wee hours of the morning, then they came out and took the Mona Lisa down off the wall, took the pegs off the wall, and took it out of the um, protective glass and out of the frame and all that. So they just had the wooden canvas left of it, and so apparently Vincenzo there, he covered it up with a smock or a piece of cloth or whatever, and just walked out with it. Walked right out of the museum with it. But it was pretty early morning and whatnot. And so yeah, they hid in the closet all night and came out in the wee hours of the morning, took her, I'm going to use feminine pronouns for the Mona Lisa, by the way, but they took her out of the frame, out of the protective glass and all that, and made away with her. And in doing so, made her a giant star, made her a big star. And so I think it's possible that Mona Lisa would not be the super valuable global icon it is today if she had not been stolen from the Louvre back then. And one funny thing about this is this guy, he thought he was being all patriotic. Remember, he's Italian, and he was under the misconception that Napoleon had stolen Mona Lisa from Italy. So he's all bringing her back home, just bringing her back home. And that was part of his defense in court. Um, and how did he end up being taken in court? And well, that brings me to how was he found out? How did they find the Mona Lisa and recover it? After he had hidden it for a couple of years in his place in Paris, then he went to Florence, Italy to try to sell the Mona Lisa to an art dealer. And of course, uh, she got recognized. Well, the Mona Lisa got recognized as the Gioconda, which is more like what they called it in Italian and in French, Joconde. But anyway, all the Mona Lisa. So he tries to sell it to an art dealer in Florence who recognizes this because, again, it got a lot of press. That theft got a lot of press. So then he was brought to trial for it. And the funny thing about that is that he was sentenced to about 7 months in prison, well, between 7 and 8 months in prison. But by the time that the sentencing was happening, he had already served that amount of time because they kept him in jail while he was on trial and all that. And so by the time he was sentenced to a little over 7 months, he had already served over 7 months in jail. And so they pretty much let him go free right away because he got credit for time served. And there you go. And so he was punished before sentencing and conviction instead of after, but still he was punished for that. And the biggest thing about it is he made the Mona Lisa into a real star, into a real global icon. And so he, in large part, is responsible for why she ended up becoming worth so very much money, even though she was a um, unknown painting, a pretty obscure painting. Nobody really knew of her or thought of her as a masterpiece. So she certainly didn't have the value of, well, currently it would be worth over $170 million if you adjusted for the 1911 value of $5 million it sprung up to. So that's, wow, we really owe this Italian guy, and not just Leonardo da Vinci, but this other guy, Perugia. We owe him for turning her into a real star. And see, he was wrong about Napoleon having come and stolen it from Italy because what really happened was King Francois I in the early 16th century he invited Leonardo da Vinci to France and he bought the painting. He bought the Mona Lisa from him then. So this was rightfully purchased by the French royalty from the artist himself. And the funny thing is, there is a little bit about Napoleon in there because for a little while before the Mona Lisa has been displayed at the Louvre since like 1804, long time now. And because before the French Revolution, the Louvre wasn't a museum yet, right? It was a royal palace. Anyway, um, and so he was wrong about Napoleon stealing it because the King of France 4 centuries earlier had bought it from them. And yeah, so that was not a good defense in court, especially because they found out it not to be true. And it's good for the Mona Lisa that she's back in the Louvre today. And I do believe more secure because she's in, I believe it's an underground area for better climate control and all that, and keeping her away from lights and whatnot. So this is all good for Mona Lisa. And she is one of the only high profile things ever stolen from the Louvre that actually has been recovered because that has not been the norm. And so let's skip forward to something that was not recovered, King Charles X's sword. And so this was stolen, like I said earlier, they went in through the same damn window in on an upper floor in the Louvre that the folks went in to steal the crown jewels in 2025. But this was different because these three thieves, they posed as uh, workers and they constructed a bunch of scaffolding to get access to the upper level windows and whatnot. And so the picture in black and white you're seeing here, these are photographers in the 1970s taking pictures of the scaffolding that the thieves used to end up stealing King Charles X's sword. And it's a very pretty sword, isn't it? That's probably because of all the diamonds that you see there. It's a very, very fancy sword. And with the scabbard and everything, also diamond laden. Um, so the sad part is this sword has never been recovered. Um, like I said, Mona Lisa was recovered, but that's a rarity as compared to most of the big things been stolen from the Louvre. I found that most of them have not been recovered. And so, yeah, that's the story of King Charles X's sword. And I think the most interesting piece of information from all of this is that that was 1976, and they used that window to get into. Well, there's a balcony on the inside, and anyway, you're in one of the upper galleries to get into there and steal a sword. And why the heck did the Louvre do nothing to prevent that same window from being used again to steal the crown jewels nearly 50 years later? To me, that's kind of like, well, that's a serious security lapse. And also, uh, something stolen, well, two somethings were some Renaissance armor from 16th century Italy, which makes them, yeah, just about as old as the Mona Lisa. And what you can see here is there was a bronze breastplate that was gold and silver encrusted. So you have some precious metals on there. It's pretty valuable. And a helmet that matches it. And what's interesting about these are not only because they were old Roman Renaissance armor, but also because this is one of the only things besides the Mona Lisa that I've found to have been recovered eventually. And how was it recovered? Well, it was stolen in 1983, but it wasn't recovered for like 38 years. And how did that happen? Because at an estate sale in Bordeaux, these two things were on the block, sort of. They were being sold, and somebody recognized them as, hey, isn't that the Louvre's armor, right? Doesn't that belong to the Louvre? And so, of course, the authorities checked it out and confirmed that was right. So, all the way in 2021, they ended up returning it to the Louvre. So, the Louvre does have them back. And that to me is funny that it was found at an estate sale because nobody who had stolen it was trying to sell it to anybody while they were still alive, probably knowing that they could get caught for it. And then it comes out once they're dead in an estate sale. Um, and that makes me think that similar things might be going on with all the other profile stuff stolen from the Louvre. People just sort of hiding it, keeping it to themselves, um, not wanting to get caught with it. That might explain why so little has been recovered. But luckily, this Renaissance armor was recovered. And well, this is unlike the two paintings that I mentioned earlier that were stolen in the 90s, including the Renoir painting, which was called Portrait d'une femme assise, which is portrait of a seated woman. And by the way, Renoir did a lot of portraits of women, many of whom were prostitutes, actually. But anyway, that's besides the point. And this one was pretty small, actually. It's only about 14 inches tall by about 10 inches wide. I know they measure things in metric system over there, but I'm in my American way and picturing it. So it's not very big. And so that made it easy enough to what they did was they cut that painting out of the frame. So it was, they had it out of the frame and it was really small. So it was pretty easy to hide. And that helped them to get away with it. And by the way, that same day, while they were stealing the Renoir painting, they also stole 12 pieces of ancient Roman jewelry, different of different precious metals. There were, I think, the majority of them were bracelets, but that's not all that was involved. But anyway, I'm more interested in the painting here. And also on the same day, another small painting was stolen, similar size to the Renoir painting, and it was also just cut right out of its frame. So they left the protective glass and the frames and all that behind and just grabbed the canvases. And so even though they had these two paintings and a dozen pieces of Roman jewelry, these were never recovered. They were able to just walk out. Yeah, the thief was able to just walk away, even though I do believe the police, they actually blockaded all the exits from the Louvre for like 3 hours so they could search through the visitors' bags and all that and see, but they never recovered it. The thief just got away in broad daylight, actually. So that's pretty brazen to do this in broad daylight and to get away with it. And the fact that they got away with it led to, well, none of these things ever being recovered to this day. 35 years later, we still haven't found either of the paintings or any of that Roman jewelry. Makes me wonder, where are they now? Are they still intact? And what's going on with that? But yeah, the Louvre doesn't have a great record of retrieving things that have been stolen from them. I wonder if that might be part of why they still keep getting targeted, you know? Or maybe it's that one window they got to deal with. And also in the 90s, there was a Corot painting in 98, so 8 years later, that was stolen, and it was a similar size. It's not as well, it is wider because it's a landscape style, but it's not really any taller than the Renoir painting was. So, and this one too, same way, it was cut right out of the frame, and which made it in its small size be fairly easy to hide and to be able to just walk away with it scot free. And so the painting was called the Chemin de Sèvres, which means the road from Sèvres. And yeah, and as you can see, it's mostly a landscape type deal. And this painter, he was pretty important in 19th century French painting. He was known for landscapes and portraits and prints from etching. So he was a pretty active artist there. And sadly, yeah, this painting was also never recovered. So that's a lot of stuff to get stolen from the Louvre without getting recovered at all, which doesn't give me a lot of hope for the recovery of the crown jewels that were stolen just earlier this year. And these are the 8 pieces of jewelry that were stolen and have not been recovered. And by eight, that's because we're counting each of the pairs of earrings as one piece rather than two. So that's why you're seeing 10 things on the screen here, but I'm saying 8 pieces of jewelry because I'm counting each pair of earrings as one unit. Um, and so what you don't see here was there was a ninth thing that they were attempting to steal, and it was a crown, a bejeweled crown and all that. And they dropped it on the way out, pretty much. Well, during the getaway, they hastily dropped it on the ground, and it did get damaged a little bit, but they don't think it was damaged when it was dropped. They think it was damaged when it was snatched out of the display case. And by snatched, I mean they used these disc cutters, to cut through the glass and whatnot and reach in and grab them right out of there. So they didn't exactly just smash and grab, but a similar thing, just using power tools. And that's also how they got in that dorm window on the upper floor there. It was also with a disc cutter. And this whole theft took like 8 minutes altogether, but they were only even inside the Louvre for 4 minutes, right? Within 4 minutes, they grabbed all these crown jewels, which are all Napoleonic era crown jewels. So we're talking these were worn by queens of France in the 19th century, mostly. And so we're talking Napoleon and his successors among the French royalty. And yeah, and as you can see, they are gorgeous pieces with plenty of diamonds and sapphires and other precious jewels, other yeah, valuable stones and whatnot. And they may, like again, like I said, the Louvre doesn't have much of a good track record in recovering stuff that's been stolen from them. So I don't have high hopes for these all finding their way home, back to the museum. And yeah, that's pretty sad because these guys again, um, they've been arrested, but who knows if any of them will be convicted or anything? Because without the things that were stolen, then you might be lacking evidence when you come to court, right? And you need evidence to convict. Although they do have some evidence, they have collected DNA and they collected some fingerprints and stuff like that. So there is some evidence. And of course, testimony. If they get some of these guys to flip on other guys and all that testimony is also considered evidence. So maybe they will be all convicted of this. That is assuming they are guilty, right? But yeah, but I don't really love the idea of the chances of the crown jewels being returned because they're not like a painting, like the Mona Lisa, right? Like she was stolen. And then as soon as that guy brings her to an art dealer and tries to sell her to him, that guy recognizes it, and knowing this was stolen and all that. So that's why um yeah, so that's why she was recovered. Whereas with jewels, there is the possibility of popping the jewels themselves out of the pieces of jewelry they're on, and you could melt down the metals and maybe sell the stones separately. But I have a little hope because these stones are so famous, and so people exactly know how they're cut. Like they would probably have to even recut the stones in order to pawn them off on somebody else. So that gives me a little more hope that they will be recovered. But again, not very high hope from my end because out of all these things that have been stolen from the Louvre, these seemingly valuable and impressive things, only the Mona Lisa and the Renaissance armor have been recovered. All the rest of it is still missing to this day. So that's very worrisome. That's very troubling. And I hope you did enjoy this little video. My favorite part of this was the Mona Lisa story that actually inspired me to make this whole video. And yeah, so let's hope the Louvre is able to get their stuff back, get the crown jewels back. And let's also hope they do some serious security updates, right? Which might be happening because actually the Louvre is just now they're raising the admission prices, raising the price of admission to the Louvre by about 45%. So from a little over 20 euros up to just over 30 euros, pretty much. So that's not going to really break the bank for somebody who wants to go visit the Louvre. They'll probably still go in. It probably won't cost them a lot of ticket sales. But what it could go towards is helping fund some better security. And after all, this is a former royal palace from all the way back in the 12th century. So buildings like this, they need a lot of maintenance and you got to keep them up, right? It's a really expensive building to maintain, but I seriously hope they spend a lot of that extra money they're getting in from the admission sales on security so we don't have to worry about anything being stolen from them ever again. Anyway, so thanks again for watching this video. Please do give it a like. And if you're not subscribed to the channel yet, please do consider subscribing. I would really appreciate that so much. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to talking to you in my next video. And so until then, catch you around next time. Bye bye.